According to Thais Bernardes, director and founder of Noticia Preta, again meaning Black News, the traditional media has always been aligned with the interests of a white political and economic elite. Therefore, it reinforces and spreads racism by covering the facts of everyday life, especially when Black subjects are the focus of the news. Historically, where did Blacks appear in the 19th century newspaper? This is Thais Bernardes talking. Where did they appear in the 19th century newspaper? They were in the place of looking for a Black runaway slave or selling a slave. This is when they had newspapers, say in the 19th century. These are some of the top headlines you'll see on the front of these newspapers, like they're looking for a runaway slave, or we have a slave for sale. This is what you would see on the front pages of some of these newspapers. Today, this place is that of a general editor. What has changed about our bodies being sold in the early 19th century and our bodies dehumanized in current years? If you access the newspapers, the people are there as people on the margins of society. There is a newspaper cover in the 2000s with Black people tied to a pole, says Thais Bernardes. Now, I'm wondering if she's talking about this particular case. I don't remember what year it was, but I reported on it on a blog where this kid was he was tied to this pole by his neck by, I guess he was being accused of stealing things or whatever, and the white residents of the neighborhood, snatched him up and tied him to a pole with this, like a bicycle lock around his neck, and tied him to a pole. I wonder if that's what she's talking about. There's been a number of these type of stories over the years where they have Black people tied to a pole, Black people, tied to a bicycle structure, one of those things that you tie you lock your bicycle to in a public parking spot. And people argue like, they still treat Black Brazilians as if they're slaves. So I'm wondering if that's what she's talking about, because this comment didn't go much further, but that's what I think she might be referring to. When there is an operation inside of a favela, the traditional media will always start with, according to the police, this operation was done to combat such a thing. And what she's talking about there is the police will say, you have a huge police presence in some of the poor neighborhoods, mostly non-white populations. In Rio, they had the UPP, the pacifying police unit. And it's almost like a segregation going on there. You see people going on about their lives, and here you had the police stopping them and frisking them. They would have curfews. They would stop people from doing certain events in the community. And they felt like they were like being under like I don't know, Jim Crow or something. They feel like, what is this, apartheid? Why do you have the police set up in the primarily non-white, poor regions? And then you're treating people as if they're criminals in their own community. It's something that I've talked a lot about over the years. And they always use the context of, we're fighting, this is the war on drugs, right? We're trying to make the community safer. But yet when these police go up into these neighborhoods and they start shooting, it's usually the people who have nothing to do with crime that end up dead on the ground from some stray police bullet. So this is what she's talking about in this particular piece of the interview. It will always start from the institutional side. We come from the resident side of those who get hit by that. We can talk about the consequences of the police operation, the children who were left out of school, and the closed health posts. Doing anti-racist journalism is understanding who we are talking to, is doing nonviolent communication. This is what defines the lead, the main part of the news, adds Thais. Another thing to throw in there is that whenever somebody gets struck down by a stray bullet, often coming from police will automatically say, oh, the bullet came from one of the drug dealers. They'll say that, well, he was suspected of robbing something. They'll always justify the action for what took somebody's life in the favela when they take a shot from usually a police bullet, right? They'll take a shot, they go down, they die. There's been numerous people over the years who've died from stray police bullets who claim to be fighting crime, fighting drug dealers. And the other facet of that is that often when they talk to the community residents, they'll tell a different story from what the police tell. So this is why there is a need for alternative media, the media that tells another side of the story that is outside of the mainstream objective. So recent movements give the impression that more communications companies have been concerned with responding to social demands for greater racial diversity on their staff. whether through selection processes for hiring Black people, or in the case of media that work with video, putting more Black faces on the screens. But for both Thais and Pedro, these actions are still insufficient. I don't want representation. I want fairness, because representation means having a person there and that's it. Is the whole group represented that way? Are there Black people among directors and editors, or are they just in the news and in front of the television, which is the question. It's not just about who's in front of the camera. Who makes the decision of how to present people in front of the camera? These are decisions made behind the camera. We're going to change that narrative. We have to have independent media and at least a Black perspective from in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. What do we do? What do we change in the structure if we don't occupy places of power and decision making? Until that happens, we have the single Black syndrome, which justifies a discourse that the company is diverse, analyzes Thais. And speaking on that, there was a video that I did last week where, a popular Black actress was saying, I'm tired of being the only Black person, in the cast of a novella or whatever, right? So this is the same thing. She's saying, okay, we got a Black person there, so that's diversity. Actually, it's not. You choose the Black person, the only Black person, and then you choose how that Black person is presented. That is not diversity. Press channels aimed at the production of anti-racist content end up being more receptive spaces for Black professionals and allow them to occupy positions other than the subaltern or the subordinate. We have an objective and daily need in Brazil for the Black population to organize themselves to have a space where they can speak and be heard. To this day, we can identify a gigantic racial discrepancy in Brazilian newsrooms. Something else that I've talked about. I think there's a post on the blog about that. We still have a Brazilian press that in the general body is mostly white. And in the direction or the director's area, the people who are in control of these news platforms, it is even rarer to find someone Black. This happens in exceptional cases. The only places where this happens often are on Black media channels, says Pedro Borges. In early August, Alma Preta released an anti-racist writing manual. It brings a set of principles that should guide journalistic work based on the editorial experiences of the site. The idea is that it be read and serve as a reflection for communicators in general, regardless of whether they are linked to the vehicles of the Black press. This is Pedro Borges, the founder of Alma Preta. In the coverage, you have a diversity of views, of stages. We need to respect the people who have been victimized in certain processes. Whether it's a person who has been the target of police action, someone who has been evicted by a repossession order, or a victim of land grabbing and violence, often journalism is limited to listening to the official source. And when it listens to other people, it becomes a footnote. Our work cannot be a public safety release. We need to listen and check all sides of the stories, argues Pedro Borges. During her studies in Brazil and Europe, Thais didn't take classes on Black press and journalism courses. She argues that it is essential to rescue this story and to present it to those who work today in the communication realm. In this sense, knowing that more than 190 years of struggles and initiatives of the Black press helps to situate the present itself, the profession gains even greater contours and missions. It is essential for the communicator to understand that our steps come from afar. Sometimes people tell me that my work is pioneering. No, the journalism I do is the journalism of Homem de Cor, Mulatto, Abdias do Nascimento. Again, these are some of the first newspapers for the Black population in Brazil. And of course, I already discussed Abdias do Nascimento. So she's saying that I'm just continuing the work that our ancestors did, over 150 years ago. Abdias do Nascimento. So the journalism I do is the journalism of Homem de Cor, again, man of color, mulatto, Abdias do Nascimento, who did anti-racist communication a long time ago. What I do is a continuation of what my ancestors did. And I hope to honor minimally this path that they have traced so that we can be here, reflects Thais Bernardes. So I just wanted to present this piece today because this is I have to say, of the things that I've seen change over these last 2 decades, the online presence of Black press has just radically changed the platform where, the mainstream media has to keep up with what Black websites are talking about or they risk falling behind. Like Rede Global, which is the biggest television station in Brazil, they've increased the Black presence in their productions now. They've put more Black journalists out there. They've put Black people in the anchors chairs. They're featuring more Black people, and not only that, Black stories, Black directors in some of their television productions. So this has been a radical change that's going on in Brazil's press over the last 2 decades. And I feel like I've personally seen it up close because I've covered this stuff for so long. So I just want, I'm curious to see, how you guys feel about this article, because I feel like some of the same stuff that I talked about in this article in reference to Black media in Brazil is something, we can still identify with in the United States, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? So with that said, I'm going to close the video here. Definitely drop a comment in the comment section. Want to know what you thought about today's video. Share this video, like this video, subscribe to the channel if you've seen more than a few videos that you found interesting. Smash the notification bell so that you be one of the first people to check out my new video when I put them up. And with that said, I'm going to close the video here and just request that you all come back and check out the next video that I do post.